You're very welcome, Yvonne. But let's kick off with that very top story, shall we? Suella. Today was the big day. The Supreme Court ruling about whether or not our government can send migrants to Rwanda. Well, if you've not heard already, spoiler alert, the answer was no, they cannot. It is unlawful. Let's cross live. He keeps me company. What a lucky man, everyone. He's in the studio. I can't remember the last time we was in the studio.
I'm so lucky.
Yes, I can't believe. When was the last time we was together? A long time ago.
Far too long.
Probably reporting on something that was doom and gloom. But look, tonight, what did you make to the goings-on with the ruling of the Supreme Court?
It's a never-ending sorry saga. We've been talking about this, it seems, for years, and that's because, effectively, we have. We got, remember, from Boris Johnson in April of last year, the announcement of the Rwanda plan. A couple of months later, the plane was on the tarmac, just about to take off, and then at the last minute, the European Court intervened. And then it's been mired in the court system in this country ever since. And of course, the end, the crunch day, was supposed to be today, and it was ruled unlawful. But where are we now? We are going back effectively to square one, because even though Rishi Sunak says he is introducing emergency legislation, even though he says there is going to be a treaty in which the Rwandan government is going to enshrine in that treaty that they will not deport anyone from Rwanda, even if they are turned down for asylum in that country, it will still have to be tested in the courts here. So it will still go back to the High Court, and then whoever loses will no doubt appeal. It'll go to the Court of Appeal. It'll go to the Supreme Court. We will be stuck, it seems, in this continued cycle for many months to come.
A very expensive cycle, I hasten to add as well. Lee Anderson, he was speaking out today. He basically said, ignore the court.
Well, that's certainly one thing the government could do, but I don't think Rishi Sunak is that kind of a character, that he would just ignore international law and due process. He clearly wants to go through that particular route. The emergency legislation is upping the ante. Of course it is, in terms of enshrining in law that, as far as this government is concerned, Rwanda is a safe country. That will have to then be taken on board by the courts when they reach a determination. But we know over recent months and years just how expert the human rights lawyers, the so-called lefty lawyers, have become in being able to mount very effective challenges. They've done it very well indeed up till now, and they will continue to do that. They will continue to challenge, as is their job. They want to represent these people to the best of their ability. I can't see, despite what Rishi Sunak says about the flights finally taking off for Rwanda in spring next year,
so bring us
that
up to
happening.
Speed, because what you're referring to there is, of course, Rishi Sunak. I think it was about 4:45, so about an hour or so ago, hour and a half ago. He then did this press conference, didn't he, where he was, I don't know what you thought, but I found his rhetoric, it seemed to me to be tough rhetoric. It seemed to be on this kind of taking back control kind of rhetoric. It seemed to me to be a direct pushback to some of the criticisms that Suella made of him, which we'll come on to in the letter in a second. But what did you make to this whole emergency legislation thing?
Well, tough rhetoric, yes, but I've heard the same from Boris Johnson, Priti Patel, Liz Truss, Suella Braverman in her time. It's the same rhetoric, but the end result is also the same, that the can gets kicked down the road of yet another legal proceeding and another challenge. Let's see what happens when the emergency legislation is passed. That in itself will probably take a bit of time, because without a doubt, the Lords will kick it back a few times, back to the Commons anyway. So once that has cleared eventually, as they hope, then what happens? It'll have to be tested, as I say, in the courts.
There's a lot to get into on this subject. I want to look at... there was a very damning paragraph from Suella's letter last night about this very topic. I want to explore that. I want to ask what should happen next then? And what about this whole ECHR? Should we be leaving that or not? But for now, Matthew, a couple of lines from you. What did you think to the ruling today?
Well, it's not for me to quibble with the ruling. I suspect that they got it spot on. And the key thing is that the government pretty much knew that this was how the court would find it. I mean, pick your own adjective. Pick your own noun. Fiasco, shambles, chaos. Well, we are just months out from a general election, and let's remember that this is the government's flagship policy, and it has failed. Enormous amounts of our money, taxpayers' money, has been wasted so far. Huge amounts more look set to be wasted as well. And effectively, the plan B on Rishi Sunak's part, and we know that Suella Braverman, who he sacked this week, said that he didn't have a plan B. The plan B involves going to Parliament and trying to get Parliament to change the law to pretend that Rwanda is a safe country. It isn't.
Well, Arsenal Football Club seem to think it is, and they seem to very
It's a beautiful country. It's a beautiful country, but it's not safe if you're an asylum seeker.
And, Dawn, you spent time there. We'll come on to that in a second. But for now, just your initial thoughts on that ruling today.
It's not a surprise, is it? You just knew it was going to happen. And from now, the first rule of holes is just stop digging. I think what Rishi Sunak said today was frankly pathetic. I agree with Suella Braverman. He doesn't have any spherical objects whatsoever. And it's just all rhetoric. And for him to come out and say, so let me tell everyone now, I will not allow a foreign court to block these flights. Well, it's a British court, British judges, British legislation. It's just the man's an idiot, sorry.
One of my viewers, John, he says, why has it taken so long for Rishi to start talking about emergency legislation? Because, of course, when COVID happens, a lot of emergency stuff went through. When you look at places like Australia, they had their whole Operation Sovereign Borders. One of the key aspects, what they did, very quickly, they appointed the military to lead their response. They defined an emergency situation quite quickly. Why has it taken us such a long time to seemingly do the same?
I think it's a very valid point. I think, you know, prime ministers, by and large, like to try to stick by the rule of law. You know, Britain is proud of its reputation as being, you know, one of the founders of European law, human rights laws and legislations. That, you know, if they were to go against that, to circumvent that, to push flights out there in defiance of these human rights laws, then as a nation, it, you know, does us, in the eyes of these politicians, tremendous damage and really undermines our credibility in being able to stand up there and to say to other nations that are in defiance of human rights that you are infringing people's human rights if we are doing the same. That, I think, is uppermost in their minds.
Can anyone not see the irony here of the British government being willing to break the law to stop other people breaking the law? I mean, it doesn't make any sense.
It is completely remarkable that the deputy chair of the ruling party, Lee Anderson, and I'll talk to him about this and debate this with him on his own show later in the week, is encouraging the Prime Minister to break the law. Not break international law, that's bad enough, break our own law.